So picture this. You wake up, you roll over, and before your feet have even hit the floor, you reach for it.
Right. The glowing rectangle on the nightstand.
Exactly, the glowing rectangle. And within like 30 seconds, you have been hit with a geopolitical crisis unfolding on another continent, 3 completely opposing op-eds about that exact crisis, and a cyclical outrage about a celebrity's poorly phrased post.
Oh, yeah, you can't forget the celebrity outrage.
Never. Plus, a notification that your cousin went live on social media to complain about traffic, and, 14 breaking news alerts from a half dozen different apps.
It is overwhelming.
Yeah.
Just utterly overwhelming.
It really is. It's like stepping out of your peaceful, quiet bedroom directly into the middle of a screaming trading floor. And the craziest part is you built this trading floor yourself.
Wow. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. We really did build it.
Right, like you downloaded the apps, you subscribed to the feeds, you allowed the notifications. But today, we are taking a deep dive into a growing movement of people who are silently, systematically dismantling that very trading floor. They are walking out the back door, and they are not coming back.
It is, it's a profound behavioral shift. And it directly challenges, pretty much everything we have been conditioned to accept over the last 2 decades.
Yeah, because we've completely normalized that sensory assault, haven't we?
We absolutely have. We treat those phantom vibrations in our pockets and that constant low-level hum of anxiety as just the inescapable cost of doing business in the modern world. We assume the trading floor is just reality.
Which brings us to the core of what we're unpacking today for you, our listener. If you are listening to this and feeling that distinct heavy exhaustion, the weight of infinite information, the pressure to constantly have a hot take on whatever the internet is angry about today, well, this deep dive is going to fundamentally change how you view your relationship with your devices.
I really believe it will. The source material for this is just fascinating.
It really is. We are looking at excerpts from a text titled "The Silent Defection: Choosing Signal Over Noise." And specifically, we're going through the field notes of a source identified as the alien anthropologist and the Constellation.
Right, and the terminology there, the silent defection, that is really the key to this entire text.
How so?
Well, historically, when people are fed up with the system, they protest, right? They make noise.
Yeah, they write big, dramatic manifestos about leaving social media.
Exactly. Or they announce their departure to all their followers, like an airport departure lounge. But this source is documenting something entirely different. It is a quiet exit.
A silent defection.
Yes. It is a deliberate, completely unannounced abandonment of the attention economy by a demographic that is simply choosing to reclaim their cognitive load.
And the central paradox of these field notes, the idea that I really want you, the listener, to hold in your mind as we go through this, is something that sounds almost heretical in our current culture.
It really pushes against the grain.
It does. The text posits that choosing not to know everything, deliberately putting blinders on to the daily churn of outrage, might actually be the most intellectually responsible choice you can make right now.
Which is a deeply uncomfortable thought for a lot of people.
Oh, totally. It made me uncomfortable at first.
Sure, because for generations, we have equated being informed with being responsible.
Right.
But to understand why this defection is even happening, the source argues that we first have to examine the invisible prison we've all been living in.
The trading floor.
Exactly. We have to look at the historical baseline of the attention economy, because the foundation of our entire digital existence is starting to fracture under its own weight.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's talk about that invisible prison. Because when I was reading the field notes on this old default posture, the way the author describes how we're supposed to stay informed, I realized I've been operating under this exact framework without ever questioning it.
Most of us have. It's the water we swim in.
Yeah. The text boils the defining characteristic of our digital lives down to one single word. More.
More. Just constantly more.
More tabs open. More alerts pushing to your smartwatch. More feeds to scroll through. More podcasts playing at 2x speed so you can cram it all in.
Right, because the operating system of our daily lives was built on this implicit premise that maximum data equals maximum understanding.
Which sounds logical on paper.
It does. The idea was the more data points you collect, the closer you get to the truth. That is literally the assumption that powered the initial growth of the internet.
But I'm looking at how I actually feel when I consume that much data, and understanding is definitely not the word I would use.
No, usually leads to paralysis.
Exactly. I want you to think about your own daily media diet right now. It feels like being seated at an infinite high-speed buffet.
Oh, that's a terrifying image.
Right. The plates just keep coming down the conveyor belt faster and faster. You aren't even tasting the food anymore. You're just wildly force-feeding yourself to prove you appreciate the chef, or maybe just to prove to everyone else in the restaurant that you belong there.
And the psychological burden attached to that kind of consumption is what the alien anthropologist really zeroes in on.
Yeah, tell me about that, because it gets pretty heavy.
It does. The source notes that this constant intake didn't just remain a practical habit, it mutated into a moral imperative.
A moral imperative, wow.
Yes. The text states explicitly that, culturally, we developed an assumption that comprehensiveness was a civic duty. And the flip side of that assumption is the most dangerous part.
That missing something was framed as a moral failure.
Precisely. A moral failure.
I really need to pause on that phrase, moral failure. Because when I first read that, it sounded kind of extreme, but then I thought about the sheer panic of walking into a social situation completely unaware of the day's main character on the internet.
Oh, the dread is real.
It is. How many times have you felt a genuine pang of guilt or, I don't know, inadequacy simply for saying, oh, I haven't read up on that yet?
We experience it constantly. I mean, think about it. You're at a dinner party or you're logging into a morning Zoom meeting and a colleague brings up a trending controversy from just 3 hours ago.
Right, something brand new.
And if you don't have a fully formed, nuanced opinion ready to deploy immediately, there is this instant sense of deficiency. You feel like you are letting down the side, whichever side that happens to be.
But is it actually a moral failure, though? Or is it just like old-fashioned FOMO, fear of missing out, dressed up in a tuxedo?
Well, the text argues it goes far deeper than just FOMO. Because FOMO is about missing a party, right? This is about citizenship.
Okay, interesting. How so?
Historically, being a good citizen meant participating in your local community, voting, perhaps reading the morning paper to understand the broader national context.
Yeah.
You had a defined, manageable sphere of influence.
Right. You knew your neighbors? You knew the local issues.
Exactly. But as the attention economy scaled up, the boundaries of that sphere completely dissolved. We inadvertently equated chronic anxiety with being an engaged human being.
Wow. We equated anxiety with engagement.
Yes. The underlying logic became, if you aren't constantly scanning the horizon for every global crisis, every systemic injustice, and every cultural faux pas, you are inherently apathetic. And in the modern landscape, apathy is the ultimate sin.
So we basically made generalized anxiety a virtue.
We did.
We walk around projecting this aura of, look how stressed I am about everything happening everywhere all at once. I must be a very good, empathetic person.
And that is precisely the load-bearing wall that the alien anthropologist says is currently cracking.
Oh, goodness.
Right. The text identifies a massive shift away from this assumption. And it's really vital to note the terminology used here. The source doesn't describe this as just a temporary trend or a few burned-out individuals taking a weekend digital detox.
Not just deleting an app for a week?
No, it identifies this as a structural shift.
Structural shift. I'm trying to visualize that. I mean, when a structure cracks, it means the foundation itself can literally no longer support the weight placed upon it.
Yes. The paradigm of infinite attention demanded from finite human brains is mechanically failing.
Because we just can't do it.
We can't. A human being cannot process the trauma, the outrage, and the trivialities of 8 billion other people in real time. The machine demands it, but our biology simply rejects it.
Okay, so if the foundation of that more is better mentality is cracking, what exactly is replacing it? I mean, if people are defecting from this infinite buffet, they have to be eating somewhere else, right?
They are, and the source material outlines the specific tactics of this deliberate minority. And they are incredibly surgical about it.
Yeah, the text calls this new posture porous but selective attention.
It is a very intentional phrasing. Porous implies that there is still a flow. It is not a solid brick wall.
They aren't hermits.
Exactly. They are not retreating into a cave and refusing to engage with reality.
Right, because my immediate cynical reaction to this whole concept was, oh, so these people are just sticking their heads in the sand. Like, if there's a crisis happening in my city, I can't just be porous about it. I need to know.
And they still want to know what matters, too. The defection isn't about ignoring the world. It's about fundamentally rejecting the idea that the fire hose is the only way to find the truth.
Because the fire hose is just too much water.
Right. The defectors have realized that the fire hose is actually obscuring the truth with volume.
Okay, so they are turning off the fire hose. Let's get into the granular playbook, the field notes outline, because this is where the rubber meets the road.
This is where it gets really practical.
Yeah. The first tactic is all about curation. They are subscribing only to a handful of slow, deep sources and completely ignoring the rest.
Which requires an immense amount of discipline, if you think about it.
Oh, totally.
Choosing a slow, deep source, say a long-form weekly journal, or an independent researcher who only publishes once a month, it means you have to have a very high tolerance for letting the momentary daily chatter pass you by.
You have to be okay with not knowing.
Yes. You have to be comfortable not knowing the breaking details of a story on Tuesday, trusting that your deep source will synthesize what actually matters by Friday.
That leads directly into the second tactic, which honestly is the one I struggle with the most.
Let me guess. Push notifications.
Yes, turning off push notifications entirely. The text says these defectors are checking the news once a day or even less.
Which sounds terrifying to a lot of people.
It sounds reckless. I mean, what if there's an emergency? What if the market crashes and I need to move investments? How do these defectors deal with the anxiety of literally being unreachable by the news?
Well, you have to separate the mechanism from the content. Turning off push notifications from news apps or social platforms does not mean turning off the ability for your family to call you in an actual emergency.
Okay, that's fair.
The defectors are redefining what constitutes a crisis that requires immediate interruption.
So like a local flood warning.
Yes, that is an emergency. A politician making an inflammatory statement across the country. That is not an emergency.
Even though Twitter acts like it is.
Exactly. It is news, but it does not require you to drop what you are doing in the middle of your workday to process it.
Right.
By checking the news on a schedule, say, for 30 minutes with your morning coffee, you completely shift the power dynamic. You allow the news of the world to arrive on your schedule rather than allowing the algorithms to interrupt your life the second they need engagement.
You are dictating the terms of engagement.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. But the third tactic is the one that really caught me off guard because it involves artificial intelligence.
Yes, the AI aspect is fascinating.
Typically, when we talk about AI in the attention economy, it's a tool to accelerate consumption. It's like, hey, AI, summarize these 50 unread articles in my inbox so I can consume them in 2 minutes and move on to the next 50.
Right, speed reading on steroids. Exactly. But the notes say these defectors are doing the exact opposite.
They're using advanced tools not for aggregation, but for rigorous filtration. The source notes that they are prompting AI with highly specific parameters. They aren't asking for summaries.
What are they asking for then?
They are asking a qualitative question. They ask the AI, what did I miss that actually changes my understanding?
Wait. I really want to understand the mechanics of this. How does an AI know what changes my understanding? Am I feeding it my personal diary?
Not exactly, but it is highly personalized. Mechanically, what this looks like in practice is a user taking a massive stream of data, perhaps an RSS feed of dozens of publications or think tanks, and running it through an LLM with a deeply personalized prompt.
What would that prompt even look like?
Well, the prompt might read something like, I am an environmental scientist focused on local water policy. My core understanding of this field is based on X, Y, and Z principles.
Okay, setting the baseline.
All right. And then it says, review the last week of global news and highlight only the data points, legislation, or scientific breakthroughs that fundamentally challenge or alter my current understanding. Discard any article that is merely an update to an existing political feud, redundant commentary, or speculative outrage.
That is brilliant. That is literally using AI as a massive, terrifying bouncer at the velvet rope of your brain.
A bouncer? Yes, I love that.
Yeah. The bouncer isn't letting any information in unless it has VIP credentials, unless it actually alters your fundamental understanding of reality. It just keeps the noise out on the sidewalk.
The bouncer analogy captures the essence of the selective part of porous, but selective perfectly. But it's the final tactic outlined in the text that speaks to the porous aspect, and it's perhaps the most human tactic of all.
Returning to slow digital.
Yes. The defectors are quietly increasing their participation in offline, low-bandwidth information sharing.
Like printed newsletters, voice notes to friends, and this specific rule for small group chats really stood out. Absolutely no link sharing allowed.
Think about the psychology behind how we usually communicate in group chats. You read a headline that makes you angry or excited, and what do?
You immediately drop the URL into the chat. I do this constantly.
I all do.
I'm like, look at this garbage, or can you believe this? You drop the link. Maybe your friends click it. Maybe they just read the headline. They drop a skull emoji or a thumbs down, and the transaction is complete.
It is entirely transactional. It is the mere exchange of data. But when a group chat explicitly bans links, it forces a completely different cognitive process.
How so?
Well, If you want to talk about an article you read, you cannot just outsource the explanation to the author. You are forced to synthesize what you've learned and explain it in your own words.
Oh, wow. You have to actually digest it first.
Exactly.
So let's play this out. Instead of dropping a link about, say, a new economic policy, I have to type out, hey, I was reading about this new zoning law, and I'm worried it's going to affect housing prices in our neighborhood because of these two factors.
And notice what happens to the conversation when you do that. Your friends are no longer reacting to a disembodied journalist or some inflammatory headline. They're reacting to you, your anxiety, and your local context.
Who makes it personal?
Highly personal.
Right.
You have shifted the conversation from transactional info swapping to relational knowing. You have to hold the information, figure out what it means to your life, and present it through the lens of your own humanity.
It's the difference between forwarding a sterile press release and having a real conversation with a neighbor over the fence. You actually have to metabolize the information.
Which is incredibly inefficient from the perspective of the attention economy.
Because you can't doom scroll a nuanced conversation.
Right. It is slow, it doesn't generate clicks for the platform, but from the perspective of human connection, it is deeply nourishing.
So, okay, we have these individual habits. Trusting slow sources, dictating the schedule by killing push notifications, employing the AI bouncer to protect our cognitive load, and engaging in slow, link-free relational conversations.
Very solid playbook.
Yeah, and on a personal level, this sounds like a massive relief. But the source material doesn't stay at the individual level, does it?
No, it zooms out considerably.
It takes a massive step back to explain what happens when this defection scales up. Because apparently, my little link-free group chat is a threat to the foundational math of the internet.
It is an existential threat to the current digital architecture.
That sounds dramatic. Why?
To understand why, we have to look at the underlying economic engine that drives our digital world. The text points out that the entire attention economy is built on a strict scarcity model.
Which seems totally counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
Because the internet feels like the exact opposite of scarcity. There are infinite videos, infinite articles, infinite opinions.
The content is infinite, yes, but the commodity being traded is not the content.
The commodity is us.
The commodity is you. You only have 2 eyeballs and 24 hours in a day. Your attention is the ultimate limited, scarce resource. And the entire system, the algorithms, the social platforms, the traditional media outlets, they are all engaged in a ruthless, highly optimized war for that scarce resource. The operating logic of the internet is constant conflict for your focus.
It's an active battlefield. Every single app is fighting for those eyeballs.
Yes, but what these field notes are saying is that the defectors are not fighting back. They aren't trying to build better algorithms or launch counter-narratives to win the war for their own attention.
They are just packing up and leaving the battlefield entirely.
By walking away, the defectors are doing something far more subversive than protesting the system. You cannot protest a system that monetizes your outrage. Your protest simply becomes more content for the machine.
That is a chilling thought. Your protest is just content.
Exactly. By defecting, they are starving it.
But wait, if I walk away, if a million people walk away, doesn't the machine just keep churning without us? I mean, does it really matter to these giant tech platforms if a small percentage of people decide to read physical books instead of scrolling?
It matters deeply because it changes the physics of public discourse. The source explains that the attention economy is driven by a feedback loop of outrage.
Okay, walk me through the mechanics of that.
Let's look at it.
Yeah.
Someone posts something inflammatory. People react with anger. The algorithm does not understand the emotion of anger. It only registers the friction.
The friction, like the clicks and the comments.
The clicks, the long replies, the quote tweets. It sees that engagement and amplifies the post, pushing it to more people, which generates more friction. It is a perpetual motion machine fueled entirely by our resistance.
Okay, I want to use an analogy here because this is really clicking for me. It's like a massive societal game of tug of war.
Okay, I like where this is going.
The outrage machine is on one side, right? And it's yanking the rope, trying to pull you into the mud. And for the last decade, our default response, because we thought it was our civic duty to be engaged, was to grab our side of the rope and pull back as hard as we could.
Yes.
We wrote the long debunking threads, we argued in the comments, we fact-checked the trolls.
We thought we were fighting the machine, but we were actually providing the tension the machine needed to stand upright. A tug of war cannot exist without resistance on both sides.
It needs us to pull back.
The system requires our friction to generate the heat, that powers its advertising model.
So what the defectors are doing is realizing that the only way to win a tug of war against a friction-powered machine is to just drop the rope.
Just let it go.
Open your hands, let it fall, and walk away. And if enough people drop the rope, the machine on the other side doesn't win. It just falls over backwards. It loses its structural integrity because it has nothing to pull against.
That perfectly illustrates the sociocultural impact the text describes. If you refuse to engage with the outrage of the hour, the feedback loop breaks.
The algorithm has nothing to grab onto.
Right, it has no friction to amplify.
Right.
Without our constant resistance, the system literally cools down.
And what replaces that heat? Because human beings still have a fundamental need to connect and understand their world. We can't just have cold silence.
The text suggests that the heat of the outrage machine is replaced by the warmth of those slower, more considered, more relational modes of knowing that we discussed earlier.
The group chats without links.
Exactly. The campfire conversation replaces the screaming trading floor.
I love that. But the alien anthropologist's field notes don't stop there. Just when you think this is a really solid sociological text about internet habits, it zooms out even further.
It takes a huge leap here.
It moves past human psychology entirely. It starts looking at this defection as a biological and planetary necessity.
This is where the text elevates from a cultural critique to a systemic analysis. It introduces what it calls the planetary systems angle. The author argues that this silent defection is not just a psychological trend driven by burnout, it is a metabolic shift.
A metabolic shift. That implies a physical, cellular level of change. I never considered that my digital fatigue is basically a biological defense mechanism.
It is exactly that. The text notes that the sheer biological energy required to stay in a state of constant, hypervigilant connection to a global network is systemically unsustainable for a human ape.
We just weren't built for it.
We weren't. We are hitting a natural hard limit to our bandwidth. The exhaustion you feel is your body automatically trying to conserve energy.
So we aren't just getting bored of Twitter. We are biologically redirecting our energy to survive.
Yes. The source states we are redirecting energy from external scanning to internal coherence, from reactive monitoring to intentional attunement.
That sounds almost meditative.
It is a survival strategy. We are shifting our metabolic resources inward because the external environment has become too toxic to continuously process.
I really want to spend some real time on the analogies the source provides for this metabolic shift because they anchor this abstract concept in undeniable reality.
They are very striking analogies.
Yeah, the text gives us 3 profound systemic analogies to show that this behavior isn't some modern human weakness. It's a universal pattern of survival. The first one is biological, mycelial networks.
Mycelium provides a fascinating parallel. For context, a mycelial network is the vast, underground fungal web that connects the roots of trees and plants across entire forests.
It's like nature's internet.
It acts exactly like a biological internet, transferring nutrients, water, and chemical information between organisms.
Right, like if a tree is attacked by insects, it can send chemical warning signals through the mycelium to other trees.
Precisely. It is an incredibly efficient system of continuous connection. However, when a part of that network encounters a patch of soil that is toxic, say, contaminated by heavy metals or poison, the mycelium does not continue to send exploratory tendrils into that space.
It doesn't keep checking on the poison.
It does not continuously monitor the poison to see how toxic it is today compared to yesterday.
It doesn't doom scroll the toxic soil.
No, it shuts down the pathways to that area. It literally severs the connection and reroutes its metabolic energy to healthier parts of the forest. It sacrifices a node of connection to preserve the structural integrity and health of the whole organism.
That is incredible. The mycelium recognizes that continuous connection is not a virtue if the connection is literally killing you.
It is pure survival logic.
And the second analogy the notes provide jumps from ancient biology to advanced engineering, edge computing.
This analogy maps perfectly to the tactical behaviors we discussed earlier.
How so?
Well, in traditional cloud computing architecture, every smart device, your phone, your smart fridge, your thermostat, sends all of its data back to a massive, centralized server farm to be processed. That is the cloud chatter.
Which requires immense bandwidth. I mean, every time the temperature in my living room drops 1 degree, my thermostat has to text a server in Virginia to ask what to do about it.
And as the Internet of Things grew, engineers realized that sending every microfluctuation to a central server was wildly inefficient. The networks were getting clogged with irrelevant chatter.
So what was the fix?
The solution was edge computing. You bring the processing power right to the device itself, the physical edge of the network.
Okay, so how does a human act like an edge computing node?
By processing your life locally. The edge node handles what it needs to locally, making decisions without asking the central cloud. It only communicates with the main server when absolutely necessary for a major update.
Ah, I see.
When a defector turns off push notifications, relies on slow sources, and shifts to local link-free group chats, they are becoming an edge node.
They are processing the minor irritations, the local gossip, the daily tasks within their own mind or with their immediate physical community.
Exactly. They stop broadcasting every thought and reaction to the central cloud of social media because they realize the cloud chatter is draining their battery.
They are keeping their data processing local to preserve bandwidth. I love that. And that brings us to the third analogy from the text, which I think provides the strongest visual.
The coral polyps.
Yes. The author talks about coral polyps retracting when the water is too turbulent.
It is a very striking image of survival under pressure.
Think about a coral reef. You have millions of these tiny, delicate organisms, the polyps. When the ocean is calm, they extend their tentacles, interacting with the current, feeding on the microscopic nutrients that drift by.
They are open and receptive.
They are open, vulnerable, and deeply connected to the flow of their environment.
But the ocean is not always calm.
No. When a storm rolls in, when the current gets violent, chaotic, and churns up sand and debris, the coral faces a choice. But it doesn't try to fight the water.
That would be impossible.
It doesn't extend its tentacles further to analyze the turbulence. It doesn't send out signals complaining about the quality of the storm.
It recognizes the physical threat of the chaos.
It simply pulls its tentacles in, it retracts completely into its hard calcium carbonate skeleton. It creates an impenetrable shell to survive the storm.
It conserves itself.
And I look at that and I think, logging off of a toxic platform or refusing to watch the 24-hour news network during a chaotic election cycle is not ignorance.
It's not sticking your head in the sand.
No, you are a coral polyp, recognizing that the water is simply too turbulent right now, and if you leave your tentacles exposed, you will be torn apart. You are retracting to survive.
What unites all three of these analogies, the mycelium severing toxic ties, the edge node processing locally, the coral retracting from the storm, is that they all describe complex systems that prioritize survival and internal coherence over continuous connection.
Which flies in the face of everything Silicon Valley tells us.
It really does. Our digital culture has indoctrinated us with the belief that continuous, seamless connection is the ultimate state of being. But biology, ecology, and advanced network engineering all tell us the exact opposite.
That strategic disconnection is a fundamental requirement for a sustainable system.
Yes, strategic disconnection.
Okay, so if we are retracting our tentacles from the turbulent water, and if we are rerouting our energy away from the poisoned soil, what exactly are we doing in the dark? What are we cultivating in the quiet?
That's the most important question.
The source material leaves us with a look at what the future holds for these defectors, and it also provides a very necessary, I would say, aggressive disclaimer.
Yes, the text is adamant that this retraction is not an end in itself. The defectors are not simply checking out of society.
They aren't just giving up.
No, they are chepping into something else, something smaller, slower, and significantly more real.
And because of this quiet shift, the field notes identify what they call a faint opening for the future, a shift in cultural leadership. The text predicts the emergence of an entirely new kind of public intellectual.
But these new intellectuals will look and sound vastly different from the ones who dominate the attention economy today.
Because the current landscape rewards the loudest voices, the quickest reactions, the most inflammatory hot takes.
Right, because a hot take is pure friction. It is designed to grab the rope and yank it as hard as possible to generate engagement.
Exactly. But as the defectors drop the rope and seek slow, deep sources, the market for outrage begins to shrink.
And nature abhors a vacuum.
Right. The new public intellectual, according to the source, will be someone who operates entirely outside the friction loop. They will be the people who reliably, consistently surface what actually matters, stripped of the emotional manipulation and the noise.
They are the human embodiment of that AI bounce we talked about. They are the curators.
Yes. People won't follow them for the daily drama, they'll follow them because they trust their discernment. But before we wrap up, we have to address this crucial disclaimer at the end of the field notes.
Yes, the Lotism point.
Because it is so easy to listen to this entire conversation and conclude, okay, so these defectors are just modern monks, they hate technology, they think the modern world is evil, and they want to go live in a cabin in the woods.
The author explicitly shuts down that interpretation. The text reads, "It's not Luddism, it's not apathy, it's not a rejection of technology."
Let's define Luddism for a second, just to be clear. The original Luddites were 19th century textile workers who literally smashed the new weaving machinery because it threatened their jobs and their way of life.
It was a violent rejection of the new technology itself.
And that is entirely different from what the defectors are doing. The defectors are not smashing the machines.
Not at all.
They are heavily utilizing advanced technology like the AI filtering prompts to protect themselves. They aren't rejecting the tools, they are rejecting the default terms of service that the tools impose.
The text calls it a discernment practice, and I want to emphasize how much work that actually takes.
Because there's a misconception that logging off is the lazy choice.
It is quite the opposite. A discernment practice requires intense, continuous effort. It takes significantly more intellectual rigor to curate a slow, deep information diet than it does to passively consume a fast-moving feed.
Passive consumption is effortless.
Passivity is the easiest thing in the world. You just unlock your phone, open an app, and let the algorithm force-feed you the infinite buffet. You don't have to make a single choice. The machine chooses what you feel next.
Choosing to defect is like switching from a diet of drive-through fast food to a meticulously curated pantry.
Oh, that's a perfect comparison.
The drive-through is frictionless. It's cheap, it hits your dopamine receptors instantly, and it requires zero thought. But it makes you feel lethargic and terrible an hour later.
And defecting from that.
Defecting from that system requires you to actively source your ingredients. You have to take the time to prepare the meal. You have to actively decide what you want to put into your body, or in this case, your mind. It is an active, demanding practice.
That intentional curation is the heart of discernment. You are still eating, you are still engaged with the world, but you are doing it with an acute awareness of the metabolic cost of every single bite.
It's just so intentional.
And the final lingering thought from the source material is that this rigorous practice is spreading. The silent defection is quietly growing, node by node, person by person.
It's spreading because the exhaustion is universal. People are realizing that the old rules, the old moral imperatives of endless consumption, simply don't apply to a digital landscape that has weaponized our attention.
We are waking up to the reality of the trading floor.
So let's synthesize the journey we've been on today as we unpack these field notes. We started by confronting that heavy, invisible burden we've all been carrying, the historically absurd idea that comprehensiveness is a civic duty, and that missing the daily outrage cycle is somehow a failure of empathy or citizenship.
And from there, we examine the mechanical playbook of the defectors, the specific tactical ways they are employing porous but selective attention.
Relying on slow sources, dictating their own schedules by eliminating push notifications.
Utilizing AI not to read more, but as a bouncer to protect their understanding.
And shifting their communication back to slow, relational, link-free human connection. We looked at the economics of the internet and realized that by dropping the rope in the great societal tug of war, these defectors are actually breaking the outrage machine.
They are starving the algorithms of the friction they need to survive.
And perhaps most profoundly, we elevated this human behavioral shift to a planetary scale. We saw how this defection perfectly mirrors ancient survival mechanisms.
Biology is hard to ignore.
We are acting like the mycelium avoiding toxic soil, the edge computing nodes keeping our processing local, and the coral polyps retracting our tentacles from the turbulent water, conserving our vital metabolic energy for internal coherence and survival.
If there is one thing we want you, the listener, to take away from this deep dive into the alien anthropologist's notes, it is a restoration of your permission to miss things.
Yes, hear that loud and clear.
You have absolute permission to not know what everyone is yelling about today. Your sanity, your metabolic energy, and your intellectual depth are worth far more to your community than your participation in the outrage of the hour.
You do not have to be an open, unshielded conduit for the world's generalized anxiety. You can just walk out the back door of the trading floor. You can pull your tentacles in.
It's a choice you can make today.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final question to mull over as you go about your day. Think about The streams of information you let into your life, the apps you check out of pure muscle memory.
The things you consume without thinking.
Exactly. If missing something is no longer a moral failure, but an absolute biological requirement for your sanity, what is the one crucial information stream you're clinging to right now that is actually just poisoned soil? What would happen if you pulled your tentacles in today?
Something to really think about.
A huge thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take care of your attention out there, be ruthlessly selective, and we will talk to you next time.